everyone, this is Sakshi, and in this session I'm going to talk to you about how to score 25 plus in legal reasoning. So these are the 5 important tips that you need to remember. You have last 4 months to go for CLAT, and these are the tips that are going to help you score 25 plus in legal reasoning. The first question that I get is, should I study theory? Now, the first tip around this particular concept or particular question is, yes, you should be studying theory. Now, why should you be studying theory? So, if you have gone through the CLAT past year question paper 2023, 2022, तुमने एक चीज रियलाइज की होगी कि बहुत सारे पैसेजेस बेसिक कंसेप्ट्स पे आते हैं. मे बी अ कंसेप्ट रिलेटेड टू कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लॉ, मे बी अ कंसेप्ट रिलेटेड टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन लॉ, और मे बी समथिंग कॉल्ड एज नेचुरल जस्टिस. नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज कि अगर बहुत ही स्टैटिक टॉपिक आता है, जो मेरे पास ऑप्शन था पहले से प्रिपेयर कर लेने का, पहले से प्रिपेयर करके याद कर लेने का, या उस कंसेप्ट को अच्छे से समझ लेने का, एंड आई एम मिसिंग आउट ऑन दैट, आई एम कंप्लीटली इग्नोरिंग दैट एंड गोइंग फॉर द एग्जाम. क्या ये मेरे लिए इजी होगा उसको क्रैक करना या उस पैसेज को समझना? द आंसर इज नो. So the first tip, the first thing that you need to remember is that you have to study the theory, the basic theory of criminal law, the basic theory of constitutional law, tort law, contract law and family law, international law के basic concepts. Now, कितना डेप्थ में जाना है या कितना पढ़ना है, ये समझने के लिए all you have to understand is you need to know the basic sub concepts around it, the basic terminologies used under these law. Nobody is going to ask you the sections, nobody is going to ask you a proper provision, definition or any terminology which generally is not used. But if we talk about cruelty, so I'm expecting that you should know what cruelty is. If I say contract which is void in nature or contract done with minors are completely void in nature, so one should be knowing कि minors कौन होंगे, contract क्या होता है, और उसको जब मैं void बोल रही हूँ तो void क्या होता है. So the first thing that you need to know to prepare yourself for legal reasoning section is, do not ignore the theory. So the first thing and for most important thing, you should be studying the theory and you should not be ignoring theory at all. The next question that we need to answer and the second tip around this is, what should you study as a part of legal current affairs? Now the question is कि legal current affairs होता क्या है? So as it says current affairs, so current affairs का सीधा सीधा मतलब है something which is happening in a day-to-day life around you or around the world. Now this involves legal current affairs. So legal current affairs is nothing but all kinds of important cases what by not every high court or not by any other random court, but cases judged by basically Supreme Court or major high courts. So if there is a case which says that, for example, medical termination of pregnancy is permissible to certain limit, but court allows a woman to terminate her pregnancy at a pretty later stage, which is not permissible under law. Now this is something which is a new precedent. When I say precedent, मतलब ये पहले किसी के लिए नहीं किया कोर्ट ने, but इस particular women के लिए allow किया. So क्या ये particular case हमारे लिए important हो जाएगा? हाँ. For example, if I come up with a question that generally in the case of cruelty, divorce is granted, but court comes up with a reasoning saying that XYZ reason of cruelty will not be considered as a ground for divorce. Now, will this be an important question or important news for us? Yes. So anything which is new, which is a development, maybe it could be a development in a good manner or a development in a bad manner, but it constitutes current legal knowledge or basically current legal affairs. So these current legal affairs are important for you. Going forward, I want to show you some data which tells you कि किस तरीके के passages पिछले 4 सालों में since the CLAT has changed its pattern आए हैं, and this will help you realize and basically understand why reading theory and why reading current legal knowledge is important. If you see here, I have counted the number of passages under each subtopic and made this graph to help you understand कि कौन से ऐसे areas हैं जहाँ से number of passages ज़्यादा आए पिछले 4 सालों में, और वो कौन से areas हैं where you should be focusing on. So the first is law of torts. So law of torts, international law, consumer law, labor law, jurisprudence. These are the areas जहाँ से इक्के दुक्के passages इधर उधर आए हैं. But if you look at constitutional law, law of contracts and current legal knowledge, these are the 3 major areas जहाँ से सारे passages आए हैं. So सीधी बात है, from the tip 1 and tip 2. All you have to know is and remember is कि constitutional law बिल्कुल ignore नहीं करना है. You should be well aware, well versed with each and every concept of constitutional law. Secondly, it's the contract law. So अगर हम theory वाला, the static वाला part देखें तो the contracts and constitutional law is the most important of all. And if we talk about current legal knowledge, in general, current legal knowledge is the other important part that you should be studying. Now, coming to current legal knowledge, what all things you should be studying? As I spoken already, जितने भी cases है by Supreme Court and by High Court are important. The next is all the policies, all the laws or all the amendments that are happening are important for you. So last year का पेपर देखोगे, वहां पे ही already एक particular act जो निकला था, criminal amendment, उसके respect में question या passage आ चुका है. There was a passage on electoral bonds, there was a passage on surrogacy. So these are nothing but topics which are discussed in day-to-day life. These are the topics which are discussed in general news. And these are the topics जिनके around किसी ना किसी तरीके का कोई judgment आया है, कोई नया case file हुआ है. So these are the topics that you should not be ignoring. Now, if you say कि मैम मैंने पूरा theory पढ़ लिया है, मैंने सारा current legal knowledge for the last 10 months, 9 months follow किया है, will I be able to score good? The answer is no. I'll tell you why. Reading passages are not the only, the work that you have to do. Reading the news, reading the basic concepts are not the only thing. You have to understand the terminologies. You have to understand the legal vocab. So next time अगर मेरे passage में मुझे natural justice दिख रहा है, I should not be sitting there in the examination hall wondering what natural justice is. If I see jurisprudence, I should not be sitting there and wondering what jurisprudence is. So I should be well versed with the legal vocab. I should be well versed with the theory, and I should be well versed with the news going around the legal fraternity. If I am able to do this much, this clears that at least I am prepared for the 25-30% for my exam. So मेरा 30% तक preparation यहाँ पर हो जाता है अगर मैंने ये दो चीजें follow की है. Is reading speed important? Now, if you go and check the CLAT pattern, the CLAT exam is becoming reading intensive year by year. हर साल passages के numbers, passages के quality, passages के general length बढ़ती जा रही है, difficulty level बढ़ता जा रहा है, and generally the paper is becoming something which is very reading intensive. I remember back in 2011, back in 2010, when people from my batch and I gave CLAT, it was absolutely different. Simple principal reasoning वाले questions आते थे, maths के बहुत जो point तुम बोलते हो उसके बहुत simple questions हुआ करते थे, and that is how the pattern was. In fact, reading was not even a very important required aspect. But now the things have changed. It is completely moving towards reading intensive exam or ho bhi kyun na. Because the moment you enter the law school, you would be reading a lot of things. The judgment, the lengthy judgments, the books that you have, the general theories given by jurists. So there is a lot of reading that is involved in the 5-year curriculum that you would face. And this exam is exactly testing you for that. So coming to the question, कि अगर मेरी reading speed कम है या फिर मैं generally बहुत time लगा रहा हूँ पढ़ने में, तो मैं क्या करूँ? The answer is legal reasoning की चीजें पढ़ के तो reading speed नहीं सही होगी. You will have to move to the verbal section, the English section to improve your reading speed. But there's one thing that you can do. The one thing that you can do here is read a lot. Read the theory, read the news, subscribe to some good channel like Bar and Bench or some magazine, or you can refer the Get.Set.Law magazine that we have every month, which is very reading intensive, which has a lot of passages, which has a lot of articles, which has a lot of editorials for everybody to read. The more you read, the more you will make your brain comprehend things in a much faster manner. And trust me, this is not a 1-day or a 2-day process. It takes a lot of time. It will at least take you a month or 2. And keeping into account कि सिर्फ 4 महीने तुम्हारे एग्जाम के लिए रह गए हैं, तुम्हें आज से ही उस हैबिट में आना पड़ेगा. You will have to read a lot in the manner that you are, one, able to comprehend things while you read fast, and secondly, not just comprehending, you are also able to deduce the answer. The small tips regarding reading is, when you are reading, start underlining things. Trust me, nothing works better than underlining. This might sound very old school, this might sound something कि तुम बचपन में करते थे, but trust me, this is going to help you. जब भी कभी कोई लगे कि कोई पैसेज बहुत डिफिकल्ट है या समझ नहीं आ रहा है, या कोई ऐसा पैसेज है जो आप पहली बार पढ़ रहे हो, मतलब आपने पूरी थ्योरी भी पढ़ ली, आपने करंट लीगल नॉलेज भी पढ़ लिया, बट कुछ चीजें आपने मिस कर दी, एंड पैसेज उसी पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन से आ गया या पर्टिकुलर एरिया से आ गया, विच यू नॉट अवेयर ऑफ. Trust me, when you're reading it, keep marking it, keep underlining it. Mark all the important areas, mark all the important factors. And this is not some exercise that you should be doing while you are attempting the mock, but also this exercise should be done while you are reading just everything. So if you're reading a magazine, if you're reading a editorial, if you're reading a newspaper, keep a pencil, a pen in your hand, keep marking important areas, keep marking important information, so that by the end of the passage or by the end of the editorial or by the end of the article, you know कि इसके takeaways क्या थे, इसमें वो कौन से 5 important चीजें थी जो आपको ध्यान रखनी थी, because ultimately your question would be based on this information. So reading is important. One, to read and have a good reading speed, you will have to make sure that you know you're reading properly, you're comprehending properly, and you are making yourself extent, or you're pushing yourself to an extent that you are able to do it. And thirdly, keep writing down, keep marking it, keep underlining it as much as you can. The next question or basically tip around is something that comes from one of the students that I met, and she suggested that ma'am, har din at least 2 mock to attempt karne hi chahiye, because the more number of mocks I will attempt, the more number of questions I will be able to read and better the preparation. In fact, this is not some tip that she got from a mentor, but this is some tip that she got from some YouTube video. Now, coming to the point, क्या करना है, mocks कितने attempt करना है? To be honest, एक दिन में 2 mock attempt करोगे, which is as good as 4 hours of your time. 4 घंटे तो तुमने सिर्फ question solve करने में निकाल दिए. Plus, the number of questions you solve is never a demarcation or is never a test to know how good your preparation is. In fact, the important part is the analysis. The important part comes after the mock. So, if you ask me how many questions or how many mocks should one attempt for the last 4 months of preparation, the answer would be 2 mocks per week, not more than that. Trust me when I say 2 mocks per week, each mock comes with 5 to 6 hours of your time consumption. कैसे मैं बताती हूँ, हर mock के पहले आपको prepare करना है. ऐसा नहीं कि मेरे पास नेक्स्ट 2 घंटे फ्री है and I will just open some random mock, the 3 or 4 test series that I have bought and hundreds of mocks that I have, मैं random कोई mock choose कर लेता हूँ और बस मैं उसको ही जाके पढ़ लेता हूँ. No, nothing like that. Before you attempt a mock, you should at least invest 1 hour or half an hour to prepare yourself to attempt questions. Have a complete direction, have a complete structure in your mind कि मैं पहले कौन सा सेक्शन अटेम्प्ट करूंगा, या मैं अगर if I go and start with logical reasoning, so should I move to legal reasoning right after logical reasoning, or should I keep something which is less intensive? So मैंने logical reasoning solve कर लिया, फिर मैंने GK solve कर लिया, फिर उसके बाद मैंने सोचा चलो अब legal करते हैं, then quant and then English. So have a structure in your mind, and with each attempt of your mark of the mocks that you're attempting, keep altering this structure, keep altering, because until you experiment, until you try and see what is working for you and what is not, आपको कैसे पता चलेगा? So the best is attempt only 2 mocks per week, one thing. Secondly, invest 5 to 6 hours in each mock. How? At least invest half an hour before the mock, create a structure, decide the number of questions you would be attempting, the number of sections, or the number or the how you're going to go ahead, which section to solve first, which section to solve next, and then go ahead with your mock. Next, once the mock is done, the most important part is the analysis. अब analysis में हम generally करते क्या है? We go ahead and we look for all the questions जो हमने गलत कर दिए या फिर हमने वो questions छोड़ दिए. We do not go back and see the questions that we have already attempted in a corrected manner. Why? Because obviously, अगर सही किया है तो उसको दोबारा देखने की क्या जरूरत है? This is what our thought process is. Trust me, there is a high possibility that if you go back and check the questions that you have already attempted and you have marked correct answers, हो सकता है दोबारा अटेम्प्ट करोगे और गलती कर दोगे. इसीलिए जब हम एनालिसिस की बात करते हैं, the entire mock should be analyzed. The entire mock should be analyzed in such a manner that you're not just going through the wrong and the unattempted questions, but also going through all the questions that you attempted correctly. What is the next thing you should be doing while you're attempting a mock test? Is the time consumption. You should have a clear demarcation of each section and the amount of time you're spending in each section. I'll tell you what generally happens. जब आप mock attempt करने जाते हो, आपके पास 2 hours का slot है. You start, for example, with English section. You get stuck in a passage which is slightly difficult, which is slightly complicated. And you spend a lot of time in that particular passage, solving and comprehending that passage. इससे हुआ क्या? इससे हमने एक ऐसे सेक्शन का टाइम यहाँ पे यूटिलाइज कर डाला जो शायद हम वहां पे यूटिलाइज करते तो बेटर स्कोर कर पाते. सो आई हैव स्पेंट माय क्रूशियल टाइम इन अ पैसेज जो मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा था, जो मैं कॉम्प्रिहेंड नहीं कर पा रही थी, जिसका मुझे क्वेश्चंस के आंसर्स भी नहीं बने. एंड इन सब के बीच में मैंने ऐसा क्वेश्चन मिस कर दिया जो शायद इजी था, मुझसे इजीली हो जाता, और अगर मैं सॉल्व करती तो मुझे बेटर स्कोर मिलता. सो टाइम इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड ट्रस्ट मी, इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, I decide that I will complete the QT section in 10 minutes. And trust me, 10 मिनट हो जाएंगे, आपको पता भी नहीं चलेंगे. आपके 2-3 क्वेश्चंस बचे होंगे और आपको बार बार ये लगेगा कि यार ये 3 क्वेश्चन करने के बाद ही नेक्स्ट सेक्शन में मूव करना चाहिए. And without realizing, you would spend another 5-7 minutes attempting those next 3-4 questions. हुआ क्या? You actually compromise some other sections' time in this particular section. So you have to be very thoughtful, very careful, very strict with your time limit. If you have fixed a time limit for a section, the moment that time limits get over, you move on to the next section. The third thing, if I'm attempting a mock, okay, and एक section से दूसरे section पे जब मैं जाती हूँ, तो मेरा बहुत ज्यादा दिमाग जो already एक particular section में consumed है, is unable to process passages which is in a different section. What do I do here? I take a 10-second pause. I take a 15-second pause. Trust me, wasting my time reading an entire question again, entire passage again, is worse as compared to taking a 10 seconds break, regaining myself and reading it again. So ensure that you are doing that. Moving ahead. But before that, let me just go back and revise everything related to mock. First, you should not be attempting more than 2 mocks a week. You should be spending at least 5 to 6 hours in each mock. Prepare yourself before the mock, strategize, structure, bana lo, and then go ahead with the mock. Once the mock is done, go ahead with the mock analysis. And the most important, you have to ensure that you follow the time limit. Okay, coming to the last and the final tip, or basically the most important of all, is the question. How important is mock analysis? Is it required or not required? So, the first thing is, it's very much required. Yes. जितना ज्यादा एनालाइज करोगे, जितना ज्यादा क्वेश्चंस देखोगे कि तुमने क्या गड़बड़ की है, क्या गलत किया है, you will be able to help yourself improve your marks. Now, starting with the first thing, what do you have to do? As I've already told you, you should not only be just looking at the questions that you have attempted wrong or you have left unattempted, but should also go through the questions जो तुमने सही किए हैं. ठीक है? This is one thing. Secondly, look for the number of questions that you have attempted wrong. So, for example, in a section, I have 32 questions. And in 32 questions में से मैंने, let's say, 25 attempt किए. But in 25 questions में मेरे 10 से 12 negative जा रहे हैं, 10 से 12 गलत हो रहे हैं. मतलब कहीं ना कहीं कुछ गड़बड़ है. मतलब कहीं ना कहीं मैं एक ऐसे आंसर्स को चूज कर रही हूँ which is not the correct option, which is not the correct answer. And this is exactly the time when you need to pause, stop, and then see कि कितने number of questions attempt करने. So the next thing that you have to answer, or basically you have to figure out, is कि तुम्हारे negative marking कितनी है. अगर negative marking बहुत ज्यादा है, so all you have to do is limit your attempt. अगर negative marking बहुत ज्यादा जा रही है तो हमें number of questions ही कम attempt करने. अब ये बहुत difficult होता है because the moment you read the question तुम्हें लगता है कोई ना कोई एक आंसर तो इसमें फिट बैठ रहा है. Trust me, only mark the answer when you are 101% sure. So if the negative markings are too high, start with limited number of attempts. Start with marking only those answers which you are 101% sure. Once you achieve this, where you are attempting certain number of questions and majority, or let's say 80-70% of them are correct, then move on to the next step, which is marking answers where you are 50-50% sure. So if in a question अगर मैं 4 options में से 2 eliminate कर पा रही हूँ और 2 ही options है जिसमें मुझे थोड़ा सा टसल लग रहा है कि what would be the right answer, this is the stage where I will go ahead and attempt these kind of questions, because मैंने एक already चीज अचीव करी है where I am able to mark certain questions absolutely correct and I have mastered that. Now once I have mastered that and I know कि ये जो 12 questions मैंने attempt किए उसमें से मेरे 10 या 11 तो पक्का सही होने ही वाले, that is when I will go ahead and attempt 5 more questions where I am not absolutely sure but I am able to eliminate 50% of the options. That is, I am able to eliminate the 2 options and decide from the other 2 options. This is the second thing. The third thing is, if you are absolutely unsure about any question, the best is leave and move ahead. ये भी बहुत difficult होता है because if you are already read a question, you would want to mark some answer. Trust me, with papers, with entrance exams, with kind of tests which have negative marking, the best is कि अगर नहीं आ रहा है तो उसको हम छोड़ के आगे बढ़ जाए. So mock analysis is the next important thing. Moving ahead, जो मैंने इतनी सारी चीजें बताई, जो इतना सारा ज्ञान दिया, where do I apply that? Where do I test all that ज्ञान? So the best opportunity you have is the CLAT Challenger series. So it's a series of 3 mock tests, जहाँ पे एक mock test already हो चुका है, but you can still register for mock test 2. So go ahead, register for mock test 2, which is scheduled on 13th of August. Remember all the tips that I told you. Remember that with this CLAT Challenger series ka mock test, you spend at least half an hour, structure your test, have a complete strategy, what to do, what not to do. Go ahead, attempt the mock test, and then go ahead for the analysis once the mock test is over. Now, why am I pushing you to go ahead and attempt this particular mock test? Because this is not just a normal mock test, but it comes with lot of prize money. Prizes worth 8 lakh rupees. Yes, 8 lakh. Okay? So, concluding my session here with the CLAT Challenger series, where I would want you to apply whatever knowledge, whatever gyan I have given you in this video and see the result all by yourself. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.